She used to sit or lie on a kind of divan and was covered like a cocoon, a silk cocoon in draperies. And at that time she had hennaed hair and painted nails. And for a child, you know, all that time ago, it was like something completely artificial and rather frightening.
Modern dance has its roots in rebellion. It's kind of a personification of what you might call the American spirit.
A pioneer is somebody who's willing to stake everything on an idea, on a concept, on a change.
Isadora Duncan's pioneering ideas were developed quite early on. Unlike a normal child, young Isadora hated school's methods of constricting individuality and therefore convinced her mother to allow her to drop out to pursue something else. Isadora had made a business of teaching dance to the children in her neighborhood. In her autobiography, My Life, Isadora wrote, "When I was about 6 years old, my mother came home one day and found that I had collected half a dozen babies of the neighborhood, all of them too young to walk, and had them sitting before me on the floor while I was teaching them to wave their arms. When she asked the explanation of this, I informed her that it was my school of dance. She was amused, and placing herself at the piano, she began to play for me. This school continued and became very popular. Later on, little girls of the neighborhood came, and their parents paid me a small sum to teach them. This was the beginning of what afterwards proved to be a very lucrative occupation." Eventually, realizing her style was unique, she began to travel and audition for a place in a theater company. In 1896, when Duncan was 22 years old, she found a place in the Augustin Daly Company in New York City. However, she found that her style of dance clashed with that of the Times Theater companies. Isadora Duncan was discouraged by the Americans' closed mind towards her dancing, so she moved to the much more progressive London, where she felt her work would be more appreciated. She got jobs performing in the drawing rooms of the rich people. During this time, Duncan was heavily influenced by Hellenistic culture. She used to imitate the poses of women on Greek vases and in statues. These inspired her costumes, which were typically loose flowing tunics, as well as her classical, feminine, and natural movements. In 1902, Duncan was invited by Louis Fuller, another American modern dance pioneer, to tour with her. Together they traveled Europe. It was during this time that Duncan choreographed some of her famous works. Although the publicity of touring brought Isadora many fans, she felt as though the performance life distracted from the bare essence of her message, to create beauty and to educate young people. She decided that a school should be opened for this purpose. In 1904, in Grunwald, Germany, such a school was established. It was here that Duncan founded the Isadorables, protégés who would pass on her choreography later. In 1914, Duncan moved her school to the U.S., a townhouse on Gramercy Park. She left the U.S. in 1915 to found a school in Moscow, which she later left to one of the Isadorables in 1921 due to the Soviet Union's lack of support for her work. Isadora Duncan's personal life was rocky. She was a communist, an atheist, and also was bisexual. This caused many people at the time to turn a blind eye to her choreographical genius. She had 2 children outside of marriage, both of whom drowned during an automobile accident. Duncan was married briefly to poet Sergei Yesenin. He left her about a year into the marriage. Isadora Duncan believed that dance was at root a sacred art. She utilized Greek arts, folk dances, and social dances in addition to the new American athleticism, including running, skipping, jumping, leaping, and tossing. She believed that there was a close correlation between human emotion and resulting movement, and she said, quote, "I spent long days and nights in the studio seeking that dance which might be divine expression of the human spirit through the medium of the body's movement." Unlike the strictures of ballet, Duncan felt that a body should move naturally like the sea. She thought that all movement originated from the solar plexus and that codified ballet technique was unnatural and unhealthy. The name of this piece is Allegro Vivace and was choreographed by Duncan in 1915. The music you're hearing is a Tchaikovsky symphony. Isadora Duncan was known for choreographing more natural movements to pieces of music that might be originally considered for classical ballet. Most of Isadora Duncan's choreography was set on herself, but this is one of her most famous group pieces. Originally set on the Isadorables, it features 6 women. One thing that can be observed throughout the piece is the motif of pulling, as if the dancer is at tug-of-war with herself. It is easy to see here why Isadora preferred the loose, flowing Greek tunics. It makes skipping a lot easier and more natural looking. Throughout the piece, one can observe that Isadora Duncan's formations remain rather geometric and relatively symmetrical. In this particular example, but also in many of Duncan's other works, the movement quality remains light, free, airy, and buoyant, rather than constricted, tight, or sharp. As part of her rebellion against classical ballet technique, Isadora Duncan did not concern herself much with the technicalities such as the pointing of the feet or the strengthening of the arms. Rather, she found the relaxed, natural position of the foot and body to be equally as beautiful as the pointed precision of a ballet dancer. As you can see by watching this triumphant, march-like step, Isadora was able to captivate her female audience by portraying a different woman than the desperate, needy woman shown in classical ballet, but rather as a feminine yet strong spirit. It was simple formations like these that gave Isadora's work its charm, because unlike forced, codified technique, these movements were simple, natural, and human. The piece comes to a conclusion, you'll see the repetition of the familiar ring around the rosy position. Although the finale may seem linear and overly simplistic, it is nevertheless beautiful. It was a windy day on September 14th, 1927, when Isadora Duncan decided to go for a drive. At the time, she was wearing her signature long scarf and must have forgotten its length in the wind. The scarf became entangled upon one of the axles of the front wheels, and hurling Isadora from the car, it snapped her neck. There is a reason we know Isadora today as the mother of modern dance. She has inspired the genius in monumental figures including Martha Graham. Following her death, her legacy was continued through the Isadora Duncan Dance Foundation that was started by her 3 adopted daughters, Maria Theresa, Anna, and Irma Duncan. Today, the company still performs around the world. There have been 2 major films made about Duncan, as well as countless books in her memory. Songs, poems, and even fictional characters are based upon her legacy. It can be said with certainty that a figure as prolific as Isadora Duncan has left a permanent mark upon the past and future of dance as we know it. It took someone fearless, not afraid to be different, and very brave to accomplish such a feat.